What if I told you that the very things you're desperately clinging to are exactly what's keeping you imprisoned? You see, in our frantic pursuit of freedom, we've become slaves to our attachments. We believe these attachments bring us security. But what if they're actually the locks on our cage? Think about it. The mind that seeks to escape suffering through attachment is like a man trying to escape his shadow by running. He only ensures the shadow keeps pace. Let me tell you something. There are four particularly dangerous attachments that have ensnared almost every one of us, and until you recognize them, you remain trapped in an illusion of your own making. But here's the thing. The cage door has always been open. This paradox runs deeper than most of us realize. We spend our lives accumulating things, relationships, identities, and certainties, believing that each acquisition brings us closer to happiness and security. Yet with each new possession, each new attachment, the walls of our prison grow higher. You see, the very nature of attachment creates the suffering we're trying to escape. The more tightly we hold on to something, the more it controls us. The more desperately we cling to our attachments, the more we fear their loss. And in that fear, we become paralyzed, unable to truly live. In Eastern philosophy, attachment is recognized as the root of suffering. The Buddha taught that our clinging to impermanent things creates an endless cycle of dissatisfaction. Yet in our Western culture, we've built entire economic and social systems around the cultivation of attachment. We're constantly told that happiness lies in having more, being more, controlling more. Buy this product, achieve this status, control this outcome. We've become a society of collectors, hoarders of experiences, possessions, and identities. But here's the thing. No matter how much we accumulate, it never feels like enough. The hunger remains. Have you ever noticed that the more you possess, the more you fear losing? Have you ever achieved something you desperately wanted, only to find the satisfaction fleeting as your mind immediately moves to the next desire? Have you ever wondered why, despite having more comfort, technology, and opportunity than any humans in history, we still feel so trapped, so unfulfilled, so anxious? This is the nature of attachment. It promises freedom but delivers bondage. I once knew a wealthy man who owned 3 homes, 5 cars, and a private jet. By all external measures, he had achieved the ultimate freedom. He could go anywhere, buy anything, do whatever he pleased. Yet he confided in me that he felt completely trapped. His possessions possessed him. He spent his days worrying about maintaining his wealth, protecting his assets, managing his empire. His attachment to these things had become his prison. He couldn't even take a walk without his phone buzzing with problems to solve, decisions to make. In seeking freedom through acquisition, he had achieved its opposite. We grasp, we cling, we suffer. This is the cycle of attachment that keeps us trapped in a prison of our own making. And it's not just material possessions that imprison us. Our attachments take many forms, some so subtle we don't even recognize them as attachments at all. Some so deeply ingrained that we mistake them for essential parts of ourselves. Think about it. A river remains pure because it's always flowing, always releasing, never holding on. But a pond that clings to its water becomes stagnant, murky, lifeless, when we attach ourselves to anything. To our possessions, our identities, our comforts, our certainties, we become like that stagnant pond. The very act of holding on prevents the natural flow of life. We become stuck, stagnant, trapped in our own clinging. The most dangerous attachments are the ones we don't recognize as attachments at all. The ones we believe are essential to our survival, our identity, our happiness. The ones we would defend with our lives because we've confused them with who we are. These attachments have become so normalized in our culture, so expected, that questioning them feels almost heretical. Yet until we identify these attachments and understand how they imprison us, we cannot hope to be truly free. Now let us explore the first of these dangerous attachments that keep us trapped in a prison we cannot see because we've mistaken the walls for protection. Our attachments are the invisible chains that bind us, the unseen walls that confine us, as we've discovered. What we cling to for safety and happiness often becomes the very source of our suffering. The tighter our grip, the more we feel the pain of our own constriction. Let us examine more closely the first of these dangerous attachments that keep us imprisoned. The first dangerous attachment is our attachment to control. We humans have an insatiable desire to control our environment, our circumstances, our futures, and even other people. We believe that if we can just control enough variables in our lives, we will finally feel safe. We will finally be happy. But let me tell you something. This pursuit of control is like trying to hold water in your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the more the water escapes through your fingers. Our attachment to control manifests in countless ways. The meticulous planning of our futures, the endless worry about things that might go wrong, the frustration when people don't behave as we expect, the anger when life delivers the unexpected. We exhaust ourselves trying to manage every detail, predict every outcome, prevent every possible problem, and in this exhaustion, we miss the actual life unfolding before us. The psychological consequences of this attachment are severe. Anxiety flourishes in the gap between what we can control and what we try to control. Depression often follows when we inevitably fail at controlling the uncontrollable. We tell ourselves, if I can just control this situation, everything will be fine. If I can just make this person change, I will be happy. If I can just ensure this outcome, I will finally feel secure. Yet the more we try to control, the more we feel out of control. Spiritually, our attachment to control separates us from the flow of life. It places us in opposition to reality rather than in harmony with it. It creates a false sense that we are separate from the universe, struggling against it rather than being an integral part of its unfolding. The paradox is striking. The more control we seek, the less freedom we experience. The more we try to manipulate life to meet our expectations, the more rigid and constrained our existence becomes. I once knew a woman who planned her life with meticulous precision. Every hour scheduled, every goal mapped, every risk calculated. She believed this control would lead to success and happiness. Yet she found herself increasingly anxious, increasingly isolated, increasingly unable to adapt when life inevitably veered from her carefully constructed plan. Her grip on control had become so tight that it was strangling the joy, spontaneity, and connection from her life. Her pursuit of security through control had created a prison of perpetual insecurity. The wisdom lies not in seeking more control, but in recognizing the inherent uncontrollability of life. When we release our grip, when we surrender our attachment to controlling outcomes, we paradoxically gain the only control that matters: control over our responses, our attention, our internal state. This is the secret freedom hidden within the apparent chaos of release. The second dangerous attachment is our attachment to identity. What if I told you that the very sense of self you cherish and protect is actually a sophisticated cage? We become deeply attached to our self-image, to the story we tell about who we are, what we believe, what we can and cannot do. This identity feels essential, irreplaceable, the very core of our being. Yet it is this attachment that prevents us from experiencing the fullness of our potential. Our attachment to identity manifests as rigidity in our self-concept. I am this kind of person. I could never do that. This is just how I am. These statements reflect the walls we've built around our potential. We defend these identities fiercely, feel threatened when they're challenged, and make decisions based not on what might bring growth or joy, but on what confirms and protects our established sense of self. Society reinforces this attachment by categorizing, labeling, and defining us from our earliest years. You're the smart one. You're the creative one. You're the responsible one. We internalize these definitions, building our identities around them until we can no longer distinguish between who we truly are and who we've been told we are. Now, I'm not saying that having a sense of self is problematic. Identity provides necessary structure and continuity to our experience. But attachment to a fixed, unchanging identity becomes a prison that prevents growth, exploration, and authenticity. What if you woke up tomorrow with no memory of who you are? No knowledge of your past, your personality, your capabilities and limitations? What possibilities might suddenly be open to you? What freedoms might you experience? Without the constraints of your attachment to who you think you are, who might you discover yourself to be? A man I knew once suffered a temporary amnesia after an accident. For several weeks, he had only vague recollections of his past self. During this period, his family observed him engaging in activities he had always claimed to dislike, displaying talents he had never acknowledged, and connecting with people he would normally avoid. Without the constraints of his attachment to his established identity, he briefly experienced a freedom that amazed him once his memory returned. The paradox revealed itself. The more you try to be something, the less you are everything. When we release our attachment to a fixed identity, we don't lose ourselves. We find ourselves. We discover that we are far more fluid, far more adaptable, far more vast than any definition could contain. Our attachment to who we think we are prevents us from discovering who we might become. These first two attachments, to control and to identity, form the foundation of our self-constructed prison. They are intimately connected, each reinforcing the other in a cycle that constrains our experience of life. Yet they are just the beginning of the story. Two more powerful attachments await our exploration, each interwoven with the others in the complex tapestry of our self-imprisonment. We have begun to see how our attachments to control and identity create much of our suffering. These first two dangerous attachments intertwine and reinforce each other, building the foundation of our self-made prison. Yet there are still two more attachments that complete this structure, equally powerful and perhaps even more insidious because they masquerade as virtues in our society. The third dangerous attachment is our attachment to comfort. On the surface, this seems harmless, even natural. Who doesn't want to be comfortable? Comfort feels good. It feels safe. It feels deserved. Our pursuit of comfort seems like basic self-care, hardly something to question. Yet this attachment might be the most subtle prison of all. Our attachment to comfort manifests in our aversion to discomfort in any form. Physical discomfort, emotional discomfort, intellectual discomfort. We arrange our lives to minimize challenge, eliminate inconvenience, avoid difficulty. We seek the known path, the easy solution, the comfortable choice. We stay in jobs that no longer serve us because change feels too uncomfortable. We remain in relationships past their natural conclusion because being alone seems too uncomfortable. We avoid conversations that might bring temporary discord even when they could lead to deeper understanding. You see, what we call our comfort zone is actually a prison with invisible walls. Inside, everything is familiar, predictable, easy. But this apparent sanctuary prevents growth, which only happens at the edge of discomfort. It prevents discovery, which requires venturing into the unknown. It prevents transformation, which demands the discomfort of releasing old patterns. Society enthusiastically encourages this attachment. Entire industries exist to eliminate every possible discomfort from our lives. Advertisements constantly promise more comfort, more convenience, more ease. We are trained to interpret discomfort as something wrong, something to be fixed immediately, rather than something to be experienced, understood, even valued. A teacher I once knew deliberately chose a different route to work each day, ordered unknown dishes at restaurants, and regularly put himself in situations where he was a beginner rather than an expert. When asked why, he explained that he had noticed his life shrinking as he aged, his world becoming smaller as he increasingly chose what was familiar and comfortable. He recognized that his attachment to comfort was gradually diminishing his experience of life, one small choice at a time. The lotus grows in mud, not in clean water. Its beauty emerges not despite the difficult conditions, but because of them. Our attachment to comfort keeps us from the very experiences that would allow us to flourish. The discomforts we so assiduously avoid are often the precise conditions we need for growth. The fourth and perhaps most dangerous attachment is our attachment to certainty. This is our desperate need to know, to be sure, to eliminate doubt and ambiguity. We become attached to our beliefs, our conclusions, our understanding of how things work and what will happen next. We seek the solid ground of the known and fear the shifting sands of uncertainty. Our attachment to certainty manifests as closed-mindedness, premature conclusions, and resistance to information that challenges what we think we know. It appears as our discomfort with mystery, with questions that have no clear answers, with situations that cannot be neatly resolved. It shows up as our need to categorize, to define, to pin down the fluid complexity of existence. The primary driver of this attachment is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of being wrong, fear of having to reconsider our understanding of ourselves and the world. We tell ourselves that certainty keeps us safe, but it actually keeps us small. But here's the thing. The only real certainty is uncertainty. The universe is fundamentally mysterious, constantly changing, inherently unpredictable. Our attachment to certainty puts us in opposition to the very nature of reality. How can you discover if you already know? How can you grow if you're already certain? How can you connect with others if your certainty leaves no room for their perspective? Our quest for absolute certainty is not only impossible, it's imprisoning. Certainty limits. Certainty blinds. Certainty imprisons. I knew a brilliant scientist who had made significant contributions to his field. In his later years, he confessed that his greatest regret was how often his certainty had prevented him from seeing what was actually there. How many discoveries he might have made if he hadn't been so certain about what was possible and what wasn't. His attachment to his existing knowledge had become a barrier to new knowledge. Think about it. Every significant breakthrough in human understanding has come from someone willing to step beyond the certainty of their time. Every personal transformation begins with the willingness to question what we've been certain about. Every deepening of wisdom requires embracing the vastness of what we don't know, rather than clinging to the smallness of what we think we do. When we release our attachment to certainty, we enter the realm of infinite possibility. We open ourselves to surprise, to wonder, to discovery. The universe reveals itself not as a problem to be solved, but as a mystery to be lived. This is perhaps the most profound freedom of all. Not the freedom of knowing everything, but the freedom of not needing to know. These four attachments, to control, to identity, to comfort, and to certainty, form the complete structure of our self-imposed prison. Each reinforces the others, creating a system of confinement that feels not like a prison, but like protection. Yet remember the metaphor with which we began. The cage door has always been open. We remain inside not because we cannot leave, but because we are attached to the very walls that confine us. We have explored the four dangerous attachments that keep us trapped in prisons of our own making. Our attachment to control, which promises security but delivers anxiety. Our attachment to identity, which offers definition but limits our potential. Our attachment to comfort, which provides ease but prevents growth. And our attachment to certainty, which seems to offer solid ground, but actually cuts us off from the ever-changing flow of life. These four attachments work together, reinforcing each other, creating a system of confinement so familiar we mistake it for freedom. Now we arrive at the question of liberation. How do we free ourselves from these attachments that cause so much of our suffering? The answer is both simple and challenging, obvious and counterintuitive. The path to freedom is not through fighting against our attachments, not through forcibly breaking them, but through the cultivation of non-attachment. Non-attachment is not the same as detachment. Detachment suggests coldness, disconnection, withdrawal from life. Non-attachment, by contrast, is full engagement with life without the grasping, without the clinging, without the desperate need for things to be a certain way. It is participation without imprisonment, connection without confinement, caring without attachment to outcome. You see, we cannot force ourselves to be unattached any more than we can force ourselves to fall asleep or force ourselves to relax. The harder we try, the more tension we create. The more we struggle against our attachments, the more we energize them. The path to liberation comes not through struggle but through awareness, through understanding the nature of attachment itself. The first step is simple recognition. Begin to notice your attachments as they arise. Watch how your mind clings to control in uncertain situations. Observe your fierce defense of identity when it feels threatened. Notice your instinctive avoidance of discomfort. Witness your grasping for certainty when faced with the unknown. This mindful observation is not about judgment or criticism. It is about clear seeing. Let me tell you something. Most of our attachments operate below the level of conscious awareness. They are so habitual, so automatic, so deeply ingrained that we don't even recognize them as choices. They simply feel like reality. By bringing them into awareness, we create the possibility of choice where before there was only compulsion. With recognition comes the possibility of releasing our grip, not through force but through understanding. When we truly see the suffering created by our attachment to control, something in us naturally begins to loosen. When we clearly recognize how our attachment to identity limits us, we become less invested in its defense. When we witness our avoidance of discomfort with clear awareness, we become more willing to step beyond familiar boundaries. When we observe our desperate seeking of certainty, we begin to make room for not knowing. This is the paradox at the heart of liberation. You are most free when you stop trying to be free, when you cease struggling against your attachments and simply bring them into the light of awareness, they begin to transform on their own. The tight fist of grasping begins to open, not because you forced it open, but because you recognized the pain of keeping it closed. Imagine a bird that has lived its whole life in a cage. One day, the door is left open, but the bird remains inside, not because it cannot leave, but because the cage is all it knows. It fears what lies beyond the familiar bars. This is our situation. We remain in our self-constructed prisons not because we cannot leave, but because we fear the vast freedom that lies beyond our attachments. We fear who we might be without the limitations we have mistaken for safety. The nature of true freedom is not the absence of limitation, but the absence of attachment to limitation. It is not that challenges disappear, that difficulties vanish, that life becomes perfectly aligned with our preferences. Rather, we move through life with a fundamental openness, meeting each moment as it is rather than as we think it should be. We still have preferences, but we hold them lightly. We still make choices, but we are not bound by them. We still experience the full range of human emotion, but we do not become imprisoned by our feelings. True freedom is fluid, adaptive, responsive rather than reactive. It is the freedom to be fully present with what is, without the constant overlay of attachment to what was or what should be. It is the freedom to engage wholeheartedly with life while holding everything with an open hand rather than a closed fist. It is the freedom to care deeply without demanding that things be a certain way. What if your prison was never real to begin with? What if the walls that seem so solid are actually constructed of nothing more substantial than thought, habit, and unexamined belief? What if liberation is not something to be achieved in the future, but a reality to be recognized right now? You see, the open door has always been there. The cage has never been locked. The walls that seem so solid are maintained moment by our own attachment to their existence. When we see this clearly, freedom is not a distant goal, but an immediate possibility. Not something to attain, but something to recognize. This recognition does not happen once and for all. It is a continuous process of awareness, a moment-by-moment choice to see clearly, rather than through the distorting lens of attachment. We will find ourselves caught in the old patterns again and again. This is not failure. It is simply the nature of deeply ingrained habit. Each time we notice, each time we bring awareness to our attachments, we weaken their hold. Each moment of clear seeing is a moment of freedom. The cage door has always been open. The prison walls have never been solid. The freedom you seek is not something to be found, but something to be recognized in this very moment, when you cease to be attached to the barriers you yourself maintain.